Wow, that's a great offer. How about instead I shuffle the functions of every hole in your face?
That's actually hilarious.
Villains are f***ing awesome, and I'm not talking about when they do evil things. I love villains for their contributions they add to a story. There's so many ways to write a villain. Sometimes they're a bastion of pure evil for the sake of it. Sometimes they can be someone with understandable or justifiable motivations. But my personal favorite villain is what I like to call the evil mirror. That's when an antagonist in a story stands diametrically opposed to everything the protagonist stands for and serves as a dark representation of what the hero could become if they lost their moral framework. Famous examples are something like Batman and Joker. One stands for justice and order, while the other stands for chaos and anarchy. Or in Spider-Man, Peter Parker learns that with great power comes great responsibility, only for the Green Goblin to show up challenging this very ideal by abusing the power he has. The reason I bring this up is because recently, I did a rewatch of one of my favorite shows of all time, Gravity Falls. The show is the story of how twin siblings Dipper and Mabel Pines spend the summer with their great uncle in the small town of Gravity Falls, Oregon. But as they stay there, they begin to uncover dark and paranormal mysteries after Dipper finds a mysterious journal documenting everything weird in the town. But throughout their adventures, they uncover the biggest threat of not just the town, but the entire world. Bill Cipher. The show builds him up big time, foreshadowing and Easter egging his presence since the first episode of the show. The build up for his eventual plans and how they take him down by the end of the series is one of the most enthralling pieces of media I've ever experienced. There's probably thousands of videos at this point showcasing why people love him as a villain. It usually comes down to how the writers built him up, how charismatic and funny he is, or how terrifying he can be. But today, I want to add something to the conversation surrounding Bill. Because as fun as he is to watch, I don't think he would be as memorable if he wasn't written as the evil personification of everything our heroes internally grapple with. That's what I want to cover today. Why does Bill work so well for this story? What, besides what's on the surface, makes him the perfect antagonist?
You just had to blow it up. You and your pride and your ego.
Bill has two fundamental flaws that lead to his downfall, but I'm going to cover his first, which is his ego. The few times we see him before the finale, the writers make it clear that not only is he a trickster, but he always, given the opportunity, tries to point out how much smarter he is than everyone around him.
Boy, you kids sure are gullible. I knew you'd link me straight to the code. It's funny how dumb you are.
He's kind of like if Loki and Joker combined brains and became a triangle. Now, as I've mentioned before, a mirror villain is the evil representation of the hero or their biggest flaws personified. His ego is reflected best in the characters Stanford and Stanley Pines. In a backstory we finally get after episodes of buildup, we see that Stan's brother, Stanford, is actually the author of the journals Dipper found. They go on to explain how as kids they were inseparable. While Stanford was a child genius and bookworm, Stanley was street smart and sociable. Their lifelong plan was to explore the world together for adventure. As they reach high school, Stanford is offered a scholarship to this elite school he always wanted to attend, only if his science fair project impresses those at the college. Stanley, upset that his brother might leave him behind, accidentally ruins his machine, and after his family finds out about the sabotage, kick him out of the house until he can prove he can make the money Stanford could have. Now having to prove himself, Stanley relies on his worst traits such as lying and scamming people out of their money as a desire to prove himself not only to his family, but to potentially rekindle his relationship with his brother. On the other hand, Ford goes to a crappy school but gets his degree and uses his grant money to research anomalies. He finds out that the most reports and activity of said anomalies happen in the town of, you guessed it, Gravity Falls. In his research, he discovers Bill Cipher in his dreams, and after Bill gasses him up over how much of a genius he is, he begins to design a portal so that he can learn the secrets of the universe, only to discover that the gateway he was building was a trick by Bill in order to enter our world. Now you might be wondering what exactly went wrong with Stanford. If you go back to their childhood, the two completed each other. One was book smart and the other was street smart. Had Stanford forgave Stanley and they worked together, Stanley would have seen Bill for the scam artist he was.
You would have seen him for the scam artist he is.
That's what I just said! All this goes to show that both the twins' pride and egos got the better of of them. It's the reason for their separation, and it's the reason for the potential end of the world by the end of the series. It's a great arc in showing what could have happened to Dipper and Mabel had they not put aside their own wants and desires. This now brings me to my next point. We covered how the Stan twins' ego is reflected in Bill, but what about our main protagonists, Dipper and Mabel? This is Bill's second biggest flaw as a character, which I like to call...
What is real? How do you define real?
Ever since his first introduction, us fans were trying to figure out Bill's motivations. Why did he want a gateway into our world so badly? What would he accomplish if he got what he wanted? Even when Weirdmageddon finally happened, I presumed it was just kind of a generic, I want to take over the world because kind of motive. But in his conversation with Stanford, we get a little but much needed insight into why he's doing this.
Imagine living in the second dimension. Flat minds in a flat world with flat dreams. I liberated my dimension, Stanford, and I'm here to liberate yours. Anything will be possible. I'll remake a fun world, a better world. No more restrictions, no more laws.
Bill's entire motivation is wanting to be in control of reality itself. He comes from a world restricted by rules and yearns to break free. There's also additional information provided in the Book of Bill that when he says he liberated his dimension, he means that he killed everyone there, including his own family, to get away from his reality. I love that the writers included this as part of his backstory because not only does it give us more context for Bill's motives, but it also serves the narrative purpose for our heroes Mabel and Dipper's internal struggles throughout the show, that being their denial of reality. The show, minus the sci-fi and fantasy elements, is at its heart a coming-of-age story where the characters deal with the struggles of going from childhood to adulthood. The thing is, the two siblings deal with this struggle in different ways. While Dipper wants to grow up and be an adult, Mabel doesn't want to grow up at all. This is demonstrated further in their personalities. While Dipper is analytical and mature for his age, Mabel is, well... Mabel. While their internal conflict is shown throughout the show, their confrontations with these struggles come to a head in the final episodes. Not only does Bill successfully open the gateway between his world and ours, but he also kidnaps Mabel in the process, holding her as a prisoner. When Dipper and the gang finally get to her prison, we find out that Bill has made this place where reality is whatever Mabel wants it to be. She can now live her fantasy of being a kid forever. This prison is proven to be so effective, it baits Wendy and Seuss into their biggest desires. Dipper is the only one trying not to be tempted by it, but he almost succumbs to the prison's powers when he's offered the chance to be in a relationship with his crush Wendy. Dipper's eventually put on trial for bringing up the concept of reality, a concept forbidden in Mabelland. He pleads with his sister to come back to the real world and confront the hardships of life with him because they've always been there for each other, even in the hardest of times. Despite everything that's happened to them, they can at least face the future knowing they'll do it together. In a beautifully heartfelt moment, Mabel decides to come back and they decide to face the future together and take on Bill. I'm well aware there are people in the Gravity Falls community who hate Mabel because of this character flaw and also say Dipper was constantly undermining his wants for her, and to them, I say go yourself. Dipper, just like Mabel, is very selfish at times and is constantly in denial of reality, especially when it comes to his infatuation with Wendy. If you go across the series and see the things he does to win her over, Dipper is very conniving for a goal he knows will never happen. But even with everything he does, that doesn't make him a bad character. It makes him a person with flaws to overcome. One of the biggest lessons he learns in the show, on top of embracing your childhood while you still have it, is learning that you can't force someone to love you. Also, this should go without saying, but they're 12. This is an awkward and confusing time in everyone's life. I'm so sick of this harsh criticism people apply to Mabel and no one else in the show. Every character has a selfish moment that affects people around them. Quit hating Mabel. The point of all of this is that the fundamental character flaws Dipper and Mabel overcome, their selfishness and rejection of reality, is the very thing that Bill represents. This is why where Dipper and Mabel end up as people by the end of the show is so perfect, and why also With Dipper and Mabel having overcome their flaws and now face Bill together, Stanley and Ford haven't yet. When they start fighting and ruin the chance to take Bill out, they're held hostage in a cell, realizing that they both had a part to play in their current predicament. While Stanley clearly should have aired his issues out with his brother at a later point, Ford was still selfish and never thanking his brother for saving him. When Bill captures the kids, he gives Ford an offer. If he can give him the formula to bring Weirdmageddon to the rest of the world and not just the confines of Gravity Falls, he'll spare Dipper and Mabel's lives. Ford agrees, but once Bill's inside his mind, plot twist, it's actually Stanley. Once he's trapped, they begin erasing Stanley's memories and thus defeating Bill. The reason it's so perfect for Bill to go out like this is because it shows us the consequences of spending your life in pursuit of selfish and unrealistic goals. While Dipper and Mabel decided to embrace the hardships of reality, Bill went forth trying to reject and change it. While Ford let his family help him, Bill killed them in order to get what he wanted. And while Stanley spent his life in pursuit of selfish cons, he was able to trick one of the biggest con men of all in order to save his family and the world. So remember, kids, if you're a selfish hell-bent on changing reality for your benefit, prepare to die as a result. I think this whole series and Bill himself are a great reminder of what goes into a truly memorable villain. Alex Hirsch and the writers knew the proper elements needed to showcase character arcs and the ultimate antagonist for them to face. Bill Cipher will go down as one of the best villains in animation history, not only for his frightening theatrics, but how he benefited the thematic points of the series. As a quick side note, while all the characters did defeat Bill, most people on the internet agree at this point this isn't the last we'll see of him. Not only were there theories about Bill's survival after the finale, but the Book of Bill that I mentioned earlier actually confirms it. The finale shows how whenever he was dying, he said this phrase backwards. With this, he was able to survive and is now held in a prison of sorts where he must attend therapy. The book also tells us that Bill has plans to escape one day. It's becoming more and more likely that we'll be seeing a return to the world of Gravity Falls in some way. Maybe with Stanley getting his memories back, it also gives the potential for Bill to come back. Who knows for sure? But even though it's a pipe dream that we'll ever get an official season 3 or the return of Dipper and Mabel, what I do know is that when it comes to Bill, we'll meet again. Don't know where, don't know when.
Oh, I know we'll meet again some sunny day.